took my first flying lesson when I was 15, took 2 of them that summer, and kind of going back to the how can I do this, not I'll never be able to. I took 2 flying lessons when I was 15, loved it, absolutely loved it, but I'm never going to be able to afford to take more lessons. So I just kind of, I would love to do this, but it's not going to happen. 4 years ago, something like that, I mentioned offhand that I always wanted to get my pilot certificate. And for Christmas that year, my wife got me a gift certificate for flying lessons. I thought I still had this mental aspect of, oh, that's cool, I'll go get, take some flying lessons, but then that'll be it. There's no way I could ever afford a plane. 6 months later, we were buying a plane. A year later, buying our second plane. Now, she finally, my wife, I give her a lot of credit on this, she really helped me get to my mind of, I grew up in a middle-class family, doesn't mean that I can't have my own plane, doesn't mean I can't have a jet. I just need to figure out, what do I need to do to get to that point?
Welcome to the RealPropPro podcast, where strategy, innovation, and wealth converge to redefine real estate investing.
Hello, and welcome to the RealPropPro podcast. I'm your host, Ian Dietler, Sacramento-based real estate investor. This show is all about talking to real people who are doing real work and building real freedom through business and real estate. At RealPropPro, we offer training and coaching for investors at every level. Whether you're just getting started or looking to scale, check out the free tools and resources at RealPropPro.com. Today's guest is Jon Nolen, owner of Pete, a company he's built through hard work and leadership. He's also a pilot, which adds an incredible dimension of precision and passion to his life. Jon isn't just a business owner and pilot, he's also an AI geek like me. He's always exploring how cutting-edge tech can transform business and automation. Jon, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a busy schedule. I know life can be, pretty chaotic with running a business and everything like that. So again, we really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, always happy to reach out and chat and just give my story and value to whoever I can give it to.
Great. So let's get started. Where did you grow up and what was life like as a kid?
Gotcha. I grew up in I would say a normal middle-class family in a suburb of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. My parents are still in the same house that they bought when I was 5 years old, 40 plus years ago. So it was, I'd just say normal. Nothing was extremely horrible. Nothing, we had highs and lows, of course, but I rode my bike around and played sports. I played a lot of sports. I did every sport I could, pretty much. I was always looking for a challenge, always looking for something difficult to do to prove to myself that I could do things. Yeah, and that's kind of how I got started. My parents were entrepreneurs. They had their own business, multiple businesses. My wife, who's also my partner in all of our businesses, her parents were entrepreneurs, so we were born with that entrepreneurial spirit.
Wow, it's a really nice benefit to kind of see that stuff growing up, because I know not a lot of people get that. I feel like a lot of people's parents are more W-2 minded and, go to school, get a good job, work until you retire. So, it sounds like you're pretty fortunate to have, both that from your wife's side and from your family side as well.
Yeah, we are. And also unique to it, not only were they were entrepreneurs together. So it's hard to be an entrepreneur with your spouse. It's very hard, but we had great examples on both sides, so we're very fortunate in that way.
Nice. What about like high school and college? It sounded like you were playing sports and stuff like that. Did you go to college right after high school, or did you take a break? What was that like?
Good question. I did go to college right after high school. A bit of a long story there. I won't drag everybody through, but I didn't play sports in college. I was not a gifted athlete by any means. I love sports. I love the challenge, but I was the kid that idolized Rocky because, he came from not being able to do anything. But I did go to college right after high school. Wasn't what I really wanted to do. I wanted to do other things, but decided to go into college. I lasted a semester and a half before I withdrew. I just had way too much fun, is the easiest way to put it. Had a great time at Oklahoma State, but a little bit too much. So I got out, or I left college, and I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I spent just shy of 5 years in the Marine Corps. That's really where I developed my sense of self, got my discipline, and kind of grew into a man that would be able to later on do great things.
What was the moment when you knew like entrepreneurship and owning businesses and creating businesses was going to be your path?
That's a great question. It's hard to say exactly when it was. I know it's kind of funny, in fourth grade, I was buying origami from a kid that made it for fun in class, and then reselling it to other kids. And then I would get candy from what I made there and then resell the candy. So I've always tried to do things. That being said, I grew up, even though my parents were entrepreneurs, being taught that, the path that you're supposed to take is you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, just, the typical W-2 path. The inkling was always there, I guess what I'm trying to say. After I got out of the Marine Corps, spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, I was med boarded out of the Marine Corps. Basically, I injured my shoulder and they said I wasn't fit to serve anymore. Then I came back, had a hard time adapting to civilian life. So I went overseas and I contracted in Iraq and Afghanistan for about 2 years. When I came back from there is when I actually started my first company. It was an IT company fixing computers. It was just part-time at that point, never really got it off the ground, but that really set it that I wanted to. I think at that point is when I maybe realized I really, really, really wanted to be my own boss. And it was about 10 years later that finally happened, but the itch was always there for me.
When did you start to get into real estate?
The beginning of that actually started when I was in high school. My parents had two rental properties. One that that we lived in when I was little, the house they had before they were in now, and another one that they bought when I was in like junior high. And with them having two rentals, what happened when a tenant moved out? I was in high school. I got to go do the fun of the make ready. And this house, the tenants had been there a long time. They had German Shepherds who never went outside. So you can imagine, if you've been in real estate, you can imagine what this house smelled like. It smelled putrid. We had wood floors, and me being the 17-year-old kid, I got to go in and clean it and bleach them and all that fun stuff. And one night I was kind of complaining about it to my parents, and they didn't seem very upset. And I, question like, why aren't you upset? You should be furious. They destroyed this house. And my parents explained that, they definitely weren't happy about it. They definitely were upset, but the people already paid the mortgage off. So, it's just kind of what happens. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're telling me like, this is basically like free money for the rest of your life now? And they're like, well, kind of, not really, but yeah, you can kind of think of that. And I was like, ooh, this is an idea. So fast forward, I never really acted on it. I want to say it was like 2011, probably 2012 is when my wife and I got into real estate for the first time. I knew nothing about wholesaling, knew nothing about buying at a discount. I had a great W-2 job at that point, working in IT. And we had some money sitting in a savings account making basically nothing, far less than inflation. And I finally talked Amy into us buying a rental. We had agents showing us houses, and all these houses needed work. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want a house that I can just move a renter in. So we bought, and I joke not, the typical house you hear people talk about is a $100,000 ARV. We paid $100,000 for it. Got a typical commercial loan, which needed 20% down, and it was on a 15-year AM. So our payment was like probably $900 a month. They rented for $1,000. So in theory, we were going to cash flow $100. I managed it myself, but you don't really. If your payment's 900 and your rent's 1,000, you're not truly making any cash flow because of repairs and other things. But that kind of got the ball started for us. So that was 2012. Then 2 or 3 years later, maybe 4 years later, we bought our second property. We were going to make it a rental. We decided to make it a flip. And, I'm an IT guy, so you wouldn't think I would know anything at all about flipping houses. Well, I knew a little bit, and I wanted to learn more because I wanted to do more than just that one property. So I did most of the work myself. Amy helped me on a lot of it. My kids they were little at the time. They still remember going to this house somewhere that we had a TV in one room for them. At nights and weekends, I worked to flip that house. sorry, I've gotten kind of way further than you had on the question. But it started out when I was 17, and then when I was in my early 30s is when I really made the jump, and then mid 30s is when I went full time into real estate.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you sharing, the whole journey because that's really what we like to focus on. We think it's very important to talk to people and really get down into the nitty-gritty of like what that journey looked like because there's so many listeners on the show who are maybe thinking about getting started or wondering how to get started. So that's really the main thing is to kind of highlight what successful people like you have done and how you got started. So you now you also do multifamily, is that correct?
We have done some multifamily. It's not our biggest push. We have gone through phases of doing a lot of different things. We've seen the shiny objects. We've jumped here. We've jumped there. We've done a little bit of multifamily. We are part of some syndications, and we have a little bit of smaller multifamily as well on our in our personal portfolio. At this point, with where the market is right now, we mainly flip. We've mainly flipped for the last few years, but we do have a cash flowing property portfolio of about 120 rentals, all here in Oklahoma. That we are we have debt on them, of course, but we're not partnered with anybody else. They're ours. That's our retirement fund, is the way we look at it. But they do cash flow now as well. If we didn't cash flow now, we wouldn't be doing it. I learned my lesson with that on that first rental of not truly cash flowing. So anytime we buy a property now, if we're going to keep it as a rental, it has to cash flow for us after expenses. After the property maintenance is budgeted and property management and taxes and insurance, people forget to account for things like, you're going to have vacancies. We put a vacancy percentage in, and that has to be factored in before we purchase it.
Yeah, there's a really great book that I'm in the middle of reading for the second time right now. It's called the Multifamily Millionaire, and they really go into that phantom cash flow versus pure cash flow. So kind of like what you're talking about. The phantom cash flow is like, well, if my mortgage is this and I'm collecting this, that's my cash flow. Your $1,000 income and your $900 payment going out. It looks like it's $100, but your pure cash flow is probably going to be negative because, like you said, you're going to have to factor in vacancies, capex, which capital expenditures. Those are kind of the big ticket items you have to replace. You got to, every month you got to stash away money for that. So anyone who's interested, I encourage them to read that book. It's a really great book, really good for getting started in multifamily, small multifamily. So let's kind of shift gears here. I really want to get into talking about Pete. What brought that on, and what did it look like starting that company?
Well, it didn't start out as intending to be its own company. I kind of mentioned that I was in IT. I worked for a pharmacy software company for about a decade, did everything there from training new users on how to use the software to software development. I did our mobile and web development for that company when I was there. And then when I left, I was the vice president of IT. I'd moved out of those roles and I was vice president of IT. And I thought I would never get back into IT. But with our businesses, because we were flipping houses, we were wholesaling, we were buying properties as rentals, operations just comes into my nature and getting into efficiencies. And I hated how we had a software over here that did this after we got a property under contract, but we had our CRM over here, our phone system here, all these different pieces, Google Drive here for this. And I would see honest mistakes made by my team and by myself that would cost us, if it cost us $50 here, $50 there, it's not a big deal, but there were times it cost us thousands of dollars. Not to mention just lost productivity. And so I started kind of trying to pull those things together. And where do people go when they start down that road? Generally, they start messing with Zapier, doing a lot of integrations that way. And Zapier can do some great things, but it's not going to pull everything together all in one system. So I went back to my IT developer roots and started creating a software for intentionally, specifically just for our company. It was no frills. It didn't look pretty. It got the job done. But then after a few years of using that and working on that, talking to enough people, they had the same problems we did. And Amy kept telling me, you need to think about making this a business. And I want to say 4 years ago, about 4 years ago is when we decided to make the jump, and we started developing peat as a commercial product, and we released it about 2 years ago.
Wow, it's only been around for 2 years?
It's only been commercial for about 2 years. Yeah. My team's been using it longer, but yeah, and it's just grown. It grew from not like, here's an easy example. And anybody who does buys and holds knows this, or has encountered it. If you're working with local banks or even larger institutions, they want your rent roll, or not necessarily your rent roll, but your list of your properties every year. What the ARV is, what your mortgage balance is on it, how much you put into it, all these fun things, what your rent is. And we got to keep that in a spreadsheet. And it was a pain because every bank wanted the spreadsheet a little bit different. And so my very first part was just getting all that info into one place where I could just go and say, okay, this is for Bank First. This is for Sooner State Bank. And it would just export it the way they wanted it. So when the bankers loved it, because when they said, hey, need to update your financials, I'd be like, oh, okay, here. And I'd email it to them 5 minutes later. Nobody else does that. They were like, oh, this is great. We love you. That's kind of cool.
That's really cool that you're able to develop that out. What other use cases are there for Pete? Like um, what other benefits are there to using your software as opposed to using 20 other ones?
Having everything in one makes a lot of things more simple. So if you eventually we all have turnover, whether it's, somebody's been with us for a long time, or we have somebody that's new that just doesn't work out. Training somebody on a single software is a lot easier and a lot cheaper than training them on 10 or 20 different softwares, or even 5 different softwares. So that's the number one. But I made Pete flexible so that people who are buying holds can use it. They can use it to monitor the leads that they're looking at to purchase, and then they can maintain it all the way through. Flippers can use it. They can manage their rehabs through there. They can have their contractors log in and see some information. Wholesalers obviously can use it as well. It has a phone system built in, file management, e-signature. I try to bring everything that we're going to do all into one place. So you save a lot on training. You save a lot on simplicity. You're not have to input in the same information multiple places. Then I'm sure you've been here before. You have stuff in multiple places and then something doesn't match. It may be a dollar figure, maybe somebody's phone number, whatever the case is. You're like, oh, which one's right? Which one's the source of authority? That's what we call it in IT. And you don't have that anymore. It's so much more simplified to have everything together in one place.
Yeah, the more and more I hear you talking about it, the more and more in my head I'm thinking of all the different programs and different systems that I'm using right now, and I'm like, man, it sure would be nice to just kind of integrate it into one simple system. That's really cool that you've done that.
Thank you. Yeah, and it makes the team work together more efficiently. I don't go out on buy appointments anymore. Very, very, very rarely do I do. But our acquisition manager, when he goes out, he's able to put into Pete basically what he would think the rehab scope is. Now, there's customers of Pete that do it on a detailed, like there's this many doors, this many windows. There's others that say, this is a $10,000 kitchen. And there's others that say, this is $30 a foot for the size of the house. It can handle whatever method people use. But he's able to record that in Pete. So, number one, you don't buy every house that you see. You buy a small majority of them. Well, you follow up with them. Pete can follow up, does a lot of automated follow-up. But 6 months later, 8 months later, 18 months later, when the person finally calls back and re-engages, even if it's that same acquisition manager, he's not going to remember all the details on the house. The seller's going to expect that he remembers how much they offered, what all of our numbers were. They're not going to. So being able to have that in Pete, readily accessible, because the phone system's in Pete, so it's all in one screen, makes it easy for them. But let's say we go on and we're going to wholesale the property. Well, we've got that rehab scope right there. So dispo agents can see it when they're telling prospective buyers, yeah, it needs a new roof. Nope, this one doesn't need a new roof because of blah, blah, blah. It was replaced 2 years ago, whatever the case is. If you're flipping it, same thing. You've got that rehab scope, so it goes straight to the project manager. Project manager can actually clone that rehab scope and then make modifications from there. Because, let's face it, when you buy a property and you go to rehab it, whether you're keeping it as a hold or you're flipping it, something's going to change. There's going to be something that you don't know was damaged, or those few times you get lucky and There's stuff you're able to take off the scope that you don't have to do. But that gives the ability also then for that acquisition manager to come back later and say, what did I miss? What did I miss? Why did I miss it? How can I improve? And one of the number one gripes that people have of wholesalers, especially newer wholesalers, is they don't know their numbers. Well, this gives them the ability to learn their numbers. What were they wrong on? What were they right on? It makes it just a closed loop circle for them.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my gripes with wholesalers at the moment. And, they also need to really understand market too, I think is really important, because something that a person's trying to wholesale today isn't necessarily going to be the same as it was even a month or two ago. Like, the market's changing very fast. So,
Yep.
I try to educate wholesalers as much as I can and say, hey, this is what I'm offering, because the market's changing. I'm taking more of a conservative approach. Prices are dropping, so that's why my offer is so low. I mean, it's always low anyways, but this time it's especially low. Switching gears to a little bit of like mindset, like what are some of the things that new business owners need to really consider and think about when starting a new business?
I think the biggest thing, and this has taken me a long time to actually get to this point, is not thinking too ambitiously, oh, I'm going to do this. Or on the flip side, oh, I can't do that. But rather turning it into, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I get to this point? I think that's the biggest one, because you either see people who go, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that, or people get way too ambitious and ignore all the details. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go conquer that mountain. But it's mountain climbing, they forget the rope or they forget their climbing shoes. I mean, trying to make a parallel there, but you have to identify what you need to do to get to that point. Everybody's goal is going to be different. Now, that said, most people get into real estate, say they're doing it for time and their family. But if you turn around and look at most of them, they'll end up working their butt off and neglecting a lot of time with their family to try to get to that point. And we kind of can get, and I've been there. I'm not throwing stones at a glass house. We get into a cycle where we're always trying to grow, always trying to do more. Come back. What was I trying to do? How do I get there? Okay, I'm at this point now. What do I need to do next? And having that plan in place. Does that kind of make sense?
Definitely makes sense. Yeah. And, I see myself in a lot of stuff that you're saying, and I see it in a lot of other business owners, like you said. People get into business thinking it's going to free up their time, and it really just takes up more of their time because now they just have a bigger job. So, kind of along those lines, can you talk about maybe what's involved in adding employees into the company? Let's say you're talking with someone that is a solopreneur and they just own their, let's say, multifamily investment business, and they want to start to add employees. What's some advice you would give to that person on how to maybe add that first employee, and what steps should be taken before that point?
Biggest advice I can give on that is going to be similar, but a little bit different than what you hear from a lot of people. I'm sure if you haven't, or if your users haven't, they can Google it. There's a couple I say personality types. They're not personality tests, that they are behavioral assessments. DISC is one of the most common.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one. I'm drawing a blank.
Myers-Briggs?
Not Myers-Briggs. There's one that's actually legal to use for hiring. Predictive index.
PI.
Yep, PI. They are very similar. If you're using, at least use one of them. PI is a little bit more detailed, but look at those, understand the different types, whichever one you're going to use, and identify for the role that you're going to hire, what is the correct behavioral type. We can all adapt. We can all do things when we have to. I am not an outgoing person, but when I need to be outgoing, I can be outgoing. Just like somebody who's outgoing, it may be tough for them to be quiet in a room full of people, but there's times that they can do it. That doesn't mean they're going to excel at it. So identify what kind of behavioral type is good for that role and will fit that role best before you start talking to anybody about hiring them. Because too often we start liking a person, we interview somebody, we see them on paper, they may look good. We interview them, we're like, oh, this person's great. I had a great conversation with them. Okay, but that's your details person. A lot of times the details people, which in DISC it would be your C, aren't going to be the ones that carry on long conversations. So that person probably won't be a great fit in the long run. Do they have the ability? Yes, but are they going to be in the right seat? Probably not. So that's my biggest thing I tell people, because I've fallen into that myself. Past that, you get into a lot of times people say, do an audit of what you do well, what you don't do well, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. All that comes into play. There's a certain point, and it's kind of a hidden line on where you should improve yourself versus hiring somebody to do the thing for you. I think it comes down to energy a lot of the time. If you may be good at something, but especially when you're a solopreneur, you may be good at something, but if it's taking your energy down, getting that off your plate will not only free up that time, but give you more energy to go out and do things that can actually move the needle and bring in more revenue.
That's great advice for the listeners and, anyone trying to scale a little bit, or like I said, maybe add that first employee or virtual assistant. Do you currently use like virtual assistants for any roles at your job, or are they mostly like in-person employees?
We don't use any overseas VAs right now, and that's nothing against VAs. It's been an evolution in our flipping business. Or let me take that back. In our rental property management, our rehabs, our wholesaling and flipping businesses all together, most of the staff that we ended up hiring over time work well in a physical environment with other people. If they had to work at home by themselves, even with things like Zoom and stuff, it would be a struggle for them personality wise and behavioral wise. So with that, it works well that we have a office. Not all of them, like our lead manager works from home. There's no need for her to come to the office, but the others, they enjoy it. It's better for them, and it gives a lot of camaraderie. That being said, my wife, who really now runs most of those sides of the businesses, she doesn't particularly, she's not an office person. So she comes in for a few hours every day, handles what she needs to, gets the FaceTime with people, and then works remotely. She and I also travel quite a bit, so we're remote in that way. Now on our Pete side of things, our developers are all remote. Our customer support's all remote. That company is 100% remote, which I like because as we are traveling more, I'm not tied to the office. So we're not using any VAs right now just because of the way our team has come together. But VAs are a great tool for people to be able to use.
Well, that leads into the next topic very nicely. You said you do a lot of traveling. You also are a pilot. Can you talk a little bit about that and how and why you got started being a pilot?
Yeah. I grew up next to an Air Force base, and so I always saw planes, and I thought it was cool. I took my first flying lesson when I was 15, took 2 of them that summer, and kind of going back to the how can I do this, not I'll never be able to. I took 2 flying lessons when I was 15, loved it, absolutely loved it, but I'm never going to be able to afford to take more lessons. So I just kind of, I would love to do this, but it's not going to happen. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that, I mentioned offhand that I always wanted to get my pilot certificate. And for Christmas that year, my wife got me a gift certificate for flying lessons. I thought I still had this mental aspect of, oh, that's cool. I'll go get, take some flying lessons, but then that'll be it. There's no way I could ever afford a plane. 6 months later, we were buying a plane. A year later, buying our second plane. Now she finally, my wife, I give her a lot of credit on this. She really helped me get to my mind of, I grew up in a middle-class family. Doesn't mean that I can't have my own plane. Doesn't mean I can't have a jet. I just need to figure out what do I need to do to get to that point. So I've always wanted to be a pilot. I always thought it'd be fun. I always thought it'd be neat. And a lot of times people, when they hear that we have our plane, go, oh, well, you must save a lot of money over flying commercial. No. Now, if we take all 5 or all 3 of our kids, so there's 5 of us, it's close-ish to flying commercial. But when it's just me and her or one kid, no, it's not any cheaper, but I enjoy it, number one. Number 2, it's about the freedom, being able to jump in and go. Our kids had a bunch of summer camps this year from San Francisco out to Boston, down to Virginia and North Carolina. And rather than just putting them there 14, 15, and 15, rather than just putting them on commercial flights, I was able to fly them all around the country this summer to their camps. And that was really, really, really cool personally for me to be able to do.
Nice. That's really cool to be able to do that. Like you said, did I hear that you're also aspiring to get like a jet, or is there some type of goal you have? I thought I heard it. You talk about it last year.
Yeah. Yeah. We have plans. We are in line to, we were looking at a Vision jet about a year ago. Our focus has shifted a little bit because I don't like the range of the Vision jet when you have all your kids and fuel, you can't go that far. So we're going to be moving into most likely a turboprop, which is basically a plane that has a propeller on it but uses a jet engine to turn the propeller, or possibly a very small jet later this year. That's what we're working on, trying to get there.
Wow. Later this year, huh?
That's the goal. Yep. Have to find the right one.
Yeah. Has being a pilot influenced the way you run your business or approach risk?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to take the second part of that of approach risk. I don't know if it really has changed how I approach risk. I still approach risk very much in the same way. And it's similar flying as in business of identifying what the issue could be, identifying the risk. I think most people, when they think of handling risk, they don't think about evaluating what are the repercussions of this or the benefits. They just see it as a singular item. You have to always be evaluating risk. When we're flying, I have my iPad up as my maps. You don't have to use paper maps anymore. But I'm always looking for where the closest airport is, whether it's a private airport or not. Because if I lose one of my engines, I have a twin engine plane right now, I can continue flying for a while, but I need to land soon. When we had a single engine, I'm landing now. So I'm always looking forward for where that next possibility is, because it's given us the freedom to move and be a lot more flexible with where we are, like this summer. So it forced me to get, if I 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if I had a choice, I was in the office all the time. I mean, when COVID happened and I had to go work from home for a while, I about lost my mind. I was not a good person to work from home. I just didn't have that. I'd get distracted too easily. So coming into an office, I get into the mindset and I can work. So working or being able to fly and be more mobile has forced me to be more flexible in how I conduct my business and where. It doesn't have to be the perfect environment for me anymore, which I used to be very, very, very controlling of my environment.
Sounds like you like putting your business on autopilot.
I do. No pun intended. And really, the last few years, Amy's been working with me full time in the businesses for a number of years, but in the last few years, she really has taken on the biggest role in our home buying and flipping businesses, so I could focus on Pete because I enjoy it. But even then, her focus has been on, I don't want to come into the office 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then deal with the fires that happen. Entrepreneurs are going to have fires that happen on nights and weekends. It's just what's going to happen. I don't want to do that. So she has really worked hard, and we've molded Pete to be able to do things to enable her to not have to be in the office all the time.
Now, is Amy also a pilot?
Amy isn't a pilot yet. Eventually she will be. She hasn't started lessons, but she's going to at some point.
It's something that she wants to pursue.
Yeah, as she likes to joke, just, if nothing else, that way if I pass out, she knows how to land the plane, which is fair.
It's a good metaphor in life, really.
It is, because you always need to have contingencies.
Mm-hmm.
Things are never going to go the way you think they are all the time. You buy a house and it's a hoarder house and you think that everything's going to be okay. Then you clear it out and you find there's lots of water damage in a room. Or sometimes the opposite happens. You think, oh, this is going to be bad. I'm going to have to replace all these floors. Then you take everything out and you're like, oh my gosh, these have beautiful hardwood floors underneath these carpets that don't even need refinished. I've had that happen before too. So it goes both ways.
All right, kind of switching gears here, getting into a little bit of some AI stuff.
Oh yeah.
First question: when was the last time you watched The Terminator? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm
I
just
think about it all the time.
that wasn't a real question. I was just kind of joking with that. But when it comes to AI, what excites you most about it, or where are you using it in your business?
Great questions. I think what excites me is kind of abstract in it, and it's the fact that I cannot imagine the possibilities that it's going to create. Everything I can imagine that it can create, if I rationalize it, I think, yeah, there's no doubt that it's going to be able to do this or that. So the fact that it's going to expand those, I think, is just so freaking cool. Like anything else over the last 100 years, the faster we implement things, the faster we research things, it's an exponential factor. I forgot the exact term that people use to describe it, but AI has kicked that up even faster. We use it a lot of places in our business. It started out, the first thing I started working with AI wise was AI voice agents, which this was like 3 years ago, and they were not ready at that point. But I saw the possibilities. So later on, like a lot of people, I started playing with ChatGPT, and I don't even use Google anymore. For the most part, I just ask ChatGPT. I have a ChatGPT plugin for Chrome, and I use it. Like we use it for one of our features in Pete that we have right now out in beta is all of our call summaries. Every single call, we already by default record and transcribe calls with sellers and tenants and contractors. We still relied on people making notes. And if they were driving when they got the call, then they'd have to remember to put in the notes later. They had to have a task. So we've just started having call summaries created for every single property. I know there's some systems that offer and you have to go in and click a button and wait for it to do it every time. It's like, why? You're taking a lot of that out. Just make it automatic so it automatically happens. Some of the other things that we're doing for AI that we're testing out are inbound and outbound voice agents. They're going a lot better than they were 3 years ago. We're actually putting one live in our property management business next week, but then also being able to evaluate rehabs based on pictures. So we're working on a model that will take pictures that either we take at a property and load into Pete, or the seller texts into Pete, because Pete has its own phone system, and then looks at it and has a baseline that we've trained that can say, okay, you're going to need to replace the floors here. You're going to need to repaint this. You're going to be able to and get a somewhat realistic budget. It's not going to be perfect. A human estimation is never perfect, but be able to give that and have it happen almost instantaneously. So if a seller calls, if we're on the phone with that seller, and I've had this happen before, we were on the phone with the seller and you get them to text pictures while you're on the phone with them. Imagine being able to have a realistic idea of your ARV, which that's easy to do with AI now, your ARV, your rehab budget, and know right where you need to be while you're on the phone with the seller the first time. Now, all that being said, it's not ready yet for production, but that's kind of the stuff that we're working on. AI is going to replace some people. I know one of the big things people say is, don't worry about AI. It's not here to replace you. It's here to help you. It is going to replace some people, just like any type of technology advance. I mean, there's still people in factories, but there's not as many people in factories. There's still going to be people in a lot of these roles. So it's just going to change. The economy is going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to evolve. It doesn't mean we're all going to be unemployed, but it is going to replace some people. And so with that, there's going to be a lot of fear and a lot of hesitation. We have to think forward of it. Think of other ways to utilize those people.
What opportunity do you see for entrepreneurs in using AI for their business?
Oh, it's so huge. I mean, it can, depending on what
How much time do you have?
Yeah. I mean, I know guys that run some AI based masterminds, and like they're showing people how to create full blown marketing strategies and then take that strategy and create marketing assets and a marketing plan and get stuff in place with AI. You just have to know how to prompt it, which when I first started learning about it, I was like, okay, but how do you prompt? Well, you get prompts from other people, like if you're in a mastermind or something like that, or if you have a coach. But then past that, you just play with it. You're just talking to the computer, telling it what to do. I've used AI for coding before, where I
Mhm.
literally will go in and I still code manually sometimes. I do some of the coding in Pete, but I'll go in times I'll be like, hey, and I type it in, or I'll use speech to text, which people don't realize, but speech to text uses the same type of computing as AI. And I'll type that, or I'll talk that in and then tell it to prepare the code for me. It's real. I am so excited about the stuff AI can do. But I mean, it can create business plans for people. It can create marketing plans. It can create follow-ups. There's so much that it can do. It's unreal. I, I want to throw that question back at you. What do you see it as being able to do?
The thing I'm really focused on is, yeah, it's building the businesses. I'm using it, like you said, business plan, marketing plan, sales process, sales funnels, automation. I would say automation is probably one of the biggest things that I'm looking to incorporate into my business right now. And not and what's really cool, and I'm going to ask you about some companies or services that you might be using, but there's one that I've been really messing around with that I really enjoy. It's called Gumloop. I don't know if you've heard of that one,
Mm-mm. I haven't.
but basically how it's working is there's all these different nodes, and all the nodes connect to each other. And so you'll create like a workflow, like a process on screen, more of a graphic user interface instead of like coding. Like there is coding, but
Hmm.
it's more behind the scenes and you're more using a graphic user interface. And so you kind of map out these processes with different nodes, and each node can have its own little microprocess running in it. And the other cool thing that I really like about it is that you can plug in AI anywhere along those steps, right? So let's say, for instance, you're trying to find fix and flip business owners, right? And so you tell it to basically scrape data from LinkedIn, for instance,
Hmm.
find fix and flippers. And so it'll pull all that data and then push it to the next node. The next node is, hey, figure out what that person's email is based off their company website and all this stuff. Boom. So now it's doing that. And then from there, you can have it kick into like a AI kind of like a thinking node. Analyze this and tell me what the summary is of their company and what they're doing. Boom. So now it's doing that. So it's just basically like, it's almost similar to, I think Integromat became
Hmm.
Make, I believe. And so
Hmm.
kind of imagine that, a little bit more integrations, and it has like a lot of AI pieces all along the route. So that's one that I'm really looking into. I'm trying to figure out how to use that one. Their whole thing that they try to promote is any process that you can think of. And this kind of goes along to what you were talking about. Their claim is like any process you can even think of, you should be able to do with this software. So that's one that I'm really looking into a lot. I'm using chat a lot. I'd actually used Chat GTP Pro.
Hmm.
So there's a free version, there's a plus, which is $20 a month, and then there was a pro. And the pro was $200 a month, which seems like a lot of money. But what it had in it was an operator. And so
Yep.
for those of you who don't know, maybe you guys can check out some videos on it because it was really cool in that it basically you tell it to start to do something. It's almost like an employee. You like tell
Hmm.
your employee, hey, go find all the houses in this area that are under $600,000 and put it on a spreadsheet. So this operator actually pulls up like a web browser and starts to click on things. And so it's really getting close to doing some of the work that, like you said, like a VA or like an office worker would do. I was testing it out for a while, and it was cool and I really liked it, but I think it's just not quite there yet. And one of my big downsides of that process was that it stopped a lot and it required like a lot of verification. And I had the vision of, hey, do this. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'll have a list of 30 properties that I can call. The downside with that at this point of recording is that it stopped doing all of that stuff. And so I wanted to kind of set it and forget it, but it didn't really quite do that. So maybe they're still developing that out. Maybe they're trying to get that worked out. So I'll give that another shot, maybe in a couple months. You know how fast stuff is moving.
Hmm.
If something's not working, check back in a month or two and it might be completely different. So those
Yep.
are some of the things that I'm using and really excited about.
Yeah, nice. And it's interesting you said Integromat, which became Make. Most people in the US, aside from the Bay Area, which you're close to, have no
Mhm.
clue what Integromat is. I mentioned it to
I thought
developers.
everybody knew about Integromat.
I'll mention it to developers, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "It's kind of like Zapier, but different. It's more used
Hmm.
in Europe." I'm like, "Nope, never heard of it." So it's nice that somebody else mentioned it. It's really, really powerful, and it's just going to continue to get more powerful. The more people use it, the more things grow. I mean, Facebook with Llama, they've been working on that for like 12 years, I think it is. They have sunk a immense amount of money into it. And it's just going to keep going up. I mean, Sam Altman, I think last week said that it's just a matter of time before there's the $1 billion person, somebody who creates a business that's worth $1 billion where they are the only human in the business. I was like, that's pretty crazy, but I mean, yeah, at some point it'll happen.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about that too, especially the more and more I research this gum loop process, because what they have in their communities, they have these people just building these widgets or like building really small companies that all of a sudden are just bringing in millions of dollars every month. And all they did is a little workflow that people will buy. And going along those lines, that opportunity is out there. And anyone who's listening, I definitely encourage them, don't fall behind on this AI stuff. Like it's happening. There's no stopping it. The best thing you could do is stay ahead of the curve as much as you can, learn as much as you can, really spend some time understanding how it works and how you can use it in your business or shoot, maybe even your work life. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing a repetitive task,
Mm-hmm.
try to figure out how to do it in AI or have a bot or have chat do it for you. Kind of wrapping things up here. Every week on the show, we do a free book giveaway. And how it works is listeners just need to like this episode and comment which book they'd like. And up to 5 days after the air date, we'll send them a free book. So some of the options we have are right here.
I bet these are all great books.
Yeah, we got some good books here. So let's see. All right. So some of the books we're giving away are Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is always a first book to read if you haven't read it already. We have the second version, also the Cash Flow Quadrant, the Go Giver, E Myth, the 10X Rule, and one of my favorites is this one, Millionaire Real Estate Investor. This one I can't recommend enough. So again, all you have to do is comment which book you'd like and like the episode, and we'll pick one lucky winner. Any of these books stand out to you?
Oh, those are all great books. For me, the book of those that made the biggest difference in my life was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was just a mindset shift that really kind of like millions or thousands or millions of people others has affected. But those are all great, great, great books.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Rich Dad Poor Dad definitely changes the way a lot of people think. We were discussing it earlier. A lot of people go into the mindset of going to school, getting a good job, work till you retire. And that model is just kind of fading away with how much everything's starting to cost. Think about it. If you're my age, turning 40 this year, if you're my age and let's just say $1 million in retirement, how long is that really going to last you?
Oh,
Everything's going up. Healthcare is starting to be kind of confusing and not as sure. Social Security is another thing that has been a sure thing for most people's lives. And I don't even know if we can rely on that anymore. So it's really important to realize kind of where you're going to be when you retire. And that's
mm-hmm.
why we're real big on the show on creating assets. And even if you don't want to be a landlord, just learn how to invest money into other people's projects, learn how to invest with your self-directed IRA, which, we highly encourage that. Someone sitting with $100,000 in a self-directed IRA, they can invest in apartment complexes with investors and receive a nice 15% return for not doing anything but loaning the money out. So we try to get people to think differently, and so glad that we had you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time. And do you have any last comments?
My only last thing I would add is, and I'm just going to kind of regurgitate something I said earlier, but in a little bit of a different light. When the people are trying AI, because that's the biggest thing in the world right now for people to try. When they get stumped, when something doesn't work the way they're expecting, Don't throw their hands up in the air and say, oh, it doesn't work. Go back to, how can I make this work? Just keep playing with it, keep modifying, keep changing things, change little things. Sometimes these little changes you can make on some of these prompts and stuff make a huge difference. So don't get frustrated. Just change your mind to, how do I make this work? Not, I can't get this to work. This isn't going to work. So-and-so made it work, but I can't do it. No, change your mind to, how do I make this work? If you need to set it down for a day or two or a week, fine, but go back to that same mindset and you'll accomplish great things.
John's story reminds us that success isn't just about building companies, it's about building skills, discipline, and vision. Whether it's running a business, piloting a plane, or exploring AI, the same principles apply. Chart your course, stay disciplined, and be open to innovation. When you embrace both technology and personal growth, you can build a life of freedom and forward momentum. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for taking the time to chat with us, John.
I appreciate it. Have a good one, man.
And listeners, we'll see you on the next episode.